5.
Changing lives for good.
So I want to be very honest that of late I've struggled with the headlines that are on the TV news here in studio.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so difficult. And there
overwhelming.
are times when I just, no, sorry, I'm going to rather put it on a sports channel because there is so much bad news in our country, in the world. And so I'm so glad, Nico, that you've decided to broach this topic of when bad news overwhelms us.
Okay. Whenever people ask me, as happened this morning, how you doing, I always answer, I'm still alive. And people think it's a weird answer. But what I'm trying to say is I can't base my day on my feelings because I spend the day solving problems. And if I've had one of those days where I'm not able to solve the problems that are being thrown at me, then I'm going to become negative. And then I'm going to base my day on how I'm responding to the problems I couldn't solve. And I recognize that South Africa has become a pit of bad news, and it is affecting all of us. So I want to take you through this week, Tuesday, and just see what my day looked like, and then why it is I've had to work differently. I started off my day by reading the tax court decisions. I have to do that because SARS is acting in very weird ways. And a lot of taxpayers are being impacted. And amongst my clients, everybody is a taxpayer. And so these court decisions that are coming up right now for review gives me an indication of how the tax ombud is reading the actions of SARS. So that when a client comes to me and says, SARS has now gone and backdated 5, 6, 7 years and has hit me with penalties that I was not aware of, I can say, yes, this is a systemic issue. You are one of 30,000 people who have been hit by this, and this is how we are going to approach it. So that was how I started off my day, looking at problems that is affecting tens of thousands of taxpayers. I then spent about an hour talking to a high-profile, politically connected family. Dad got caught with his hands in the till. That headline we all know. We know the family quite well. What we don't know was that the family was not aware of what Dad was doing. They've had to move out of their home. They've had to move out for safety reasons. They've had to move out because everybody is attacking them. They've lost their homes. They've lost their careers. And they were not aware of what Dad was doing. And they're as much of innocent victims as we are as South Africans. So that's a side that we generally as South Africans don't get to see. And I've watched how this family is learning to cope and how their lives are never going to be the same again. And that is a problem that they are dealing with. And that affects me because I get to see a side that the newspapers and the journalists are not talking about. Immediately afterwards, I got contacted by a sister who works at one of the hospitals. When COVID hit us, she got affected. She has still not been able to return to work. She is never going to be able to return to work. And what the authorities have not explained to her is why it is that she will never again be able to work. She doesn't understand the significance of the past 2 years, and now decisions are being made about her, and this is affecting her mood and her emotions. And nobody has sat down with her and said, this is now the legal process that is being followed. And this is where you're going to need to get advice. You can no longer trust that your employer is going to act in your best interest. This is now the time that you need to get advice. So that was number 3 that I had to deal with. Her heart is broken, and she feels that she's just completely disempowered. Then I had a meeting with one of the universities, and I had to listen to how they're using the skills development levies for projects that the professors feel are important. Hundreds of millions of rand of skills development money is being wasted because those are not real issues, and that money should have been used to develop internships, not fancy projects which sound great on academic papers but are not going to make a difference. And then we get to the Parkwood incident. And I wonder how the pastors in that area are going to feel. So if I were to base my day on bad news, at that point, I'm going to want to jump off a building. And so too are the pastors and the people in ministry, because that is often how they deal with it. Now, as human beings, we do a couple of things. One is we say, I'm so overwhelmed, I'm going to do nothing. I will just pray. The Bible says prayer without action is just noise. That's not the solution for us. That's not the way we can go. We've got to find a different solution to that feeling. In fact, the central theme of the book of James is that we are supposed to find wisdom, and that wisdom is what empowers us. The second trap we fall into as Christians is we listen to CCFM and we look at Jonathan, we look at Rachel, and we say, oh, look at their ministry. And then we try and compare what we sense in our lives against what we think God is doing in your lives. And that's a trap. We are not here to compare. God has called you to a particular ministry, and that is different to what God has called the rest of us. And we each we've got to be true to what God has called us to do. It's not a matter of comparing and saying, because it looks like I'm not as effective as others, therefore I'm a failure. For me, the end of the day is simply this. I'm only in trouble if the problem that I am presented with is bigger than what God can handle. That is the only ultimate answer. No matter how big that problem is, if it's bigger than what God can handle, then I'm in trouble. And if it's not bigger than what God can handle, then I need to, like Peter, get out of the boat, face the storm, and walk towards where Jesus is calling me. And that then is the solution. So folks, yes, if you do feel overwhelmed, that's just part of living in South Africa. The issue is, maybe it's not your problem to solve. Maybe it's your problem that you're thinking you've got to solve it on your own. Thank you.
Thank you, Nico.